All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Autodesk Virtual Academy. I'll be your host today. My name is Adam Evangelista, and we got quite a session here for you guys today. Recap in general has been a widely requested topic and ranks as one of our highest viewed videos on our current YouTube channel. And so we figured, there's a new release of Recap. We got some months to go all out, give the people what they want. We have not only two senior specialists with us today from Autodesk, but we also have two certified drone pilots here today. Nate, Matt, do you want to introduce yourself here?
Hi, everyone. My name's Nate Philbrick, and I'm in the technical support specialist for ReCap. And so I've been working on this for a little over 2 years now. So it's a pleasure to work with, meet you all, and work with you all, and give you all a demonstration on the new products for ReCap 2022.
Yeah, my name is Matt Wunsch. I'm a senior technical specialist with Autodesk, just shy of 1 year with Autodesk. Background is a lot of really everything. BIM technology, CAD management. First exposure with Autodesk products was AutoCAD R10 way back in the days with the quote unquote 3D space shuttle. And like Adam said, I'm also a FAA Part 107 drone operator. So we'll see some of how that can play into ReCap in just a little bit.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks again for being on, guys. Yeah, I believe we're going to be in pretty good hands here today. And just for the uninitiated over here, I know ReCap's one of those products that some people know about, some people don't, and some people are kind of fuzzy on it in general. People talk about LiDAR, people talk about 3D scanning and photogrammetry. What are we getting ourselves into here today exactly?
So we're going to talk about the new features for ReCap. Some of the new features are Scan to Mesh, which is backed by popular demand. If you're familiar with ReCap, previous to 2018, this was a beta feature. So there's some changes with how publishing works now. So it's more streamlined with our Autodesk products, so that when you publish project, it's not going to went to an older drive called A360, and now we have cloud model storage. So those are some of the big changes for ReCap 2022, and we'll also go into some of the smaller ones, smaller changes that are also really beneficial as well.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. Sounds good. And just a bit of housekeeping before we get on our way here. This is a Zoom webinar, so if you guys aren't familiar, you guys are new to the webinar style, there is a Q&A available where you can submit questions, or I'll be moderating and looking through them myself. There is also a chat window available if you don't want to just communicate more casually. That's available as well. There will be a survey at the end and possibly some poll questions during the presentation, so feel free to provide any feedback that you guys might have. And let me know if there's any issues with audio or video quality or anything like that, and we're happy to help out. So I think with that, that's all I have for you guys here. And I think I'm ready to hand it over to you, Nate.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to ReCap 2022. We'll be taking you through some of the new features. We did things a little bit backwards here, but I'm just going to take you through a quick agenda, what we're going to do. So we already went through the introduction on who we are, what we do here at Autodesk. So we'll skip over that. We're going to talk about what's new with ReCap 2022. The three big things Matt will give us a nice demonstration of the three new features. And we'll also be talking about some of the other smaller new features with ReCap as well. And then at the end, we'll open it up to Q&A, where you can ask all questions ReCap, and we can do our best to point you in the right direction for all those questions. So Nate Philbrick, quick introduction here. Been a ReCap support lead. Odds are, if you've submitted a support request or worked in ReCap some form with us, you've come in contact with me. So and then I'm just gonna skip over Matt here since he already introduced himself. So we have a couple of poll questions that Adam is going to point out to both of you in the ReCap poll. I see they just went live right now. So 2 questions. If you can fill those out in a couple seconds here, that would be great. I might as well. I'm seeing it right now, so I'll fill them out as well.
Yeah, so
panelists can't vote.
Just to get a bit more information. Yeah. I hope you guys know that ReCap's included in the collection. Yeah, just to get a general idea of where the audience is from, kind of where we're coming from. I know some people aren't necessarily aware that, ReCap comes available in the collections already. And depending on what industry you're from, like ReCap's still pretty relevant, even if you're outside of design and manufacturing. But a lot of people talk about architecture applications for sure. There's even some others in there, which I'm curious where you guys might be from. Okay, now I'm gonna cut the poll here at about a minute. And we could even share these results, see who's all around here. So yeah, looks like we have a pretty good majority, yes, but we also have a portion that says no over there. So there you go, just FYI, everybody. If you guys have collection subscriptions, good chance you have access to ReCap Pro already in your collections. And industries, mostly product design and manufacturing. So makes sense given our current customer base, of course, but you could see some applications for architecture, and I'm sure media and entertainment might have some explicit implications for 3D scanning and the like as well. But okay, thanks for that, everybody. Feel free to provide any more information if you guys are willing. And polling here, there you go. All right, take it away, Nate.
Okay, so let's just kick things off with a safe harbor statement. Basically, all this is product is as is, and whatever we say that might be in the future or may happen, whatever we say can happen in the future is totally up in the air. But we give our best to give you a good idea of where the product is going if you have questions regarding that. So the main three big features with ReCap, I like to call them the big three. So if you use ReCap in the past, previous to 2018, there was a beta feature for Scan to Mesh. That has been brought back. So think of that as the process of taking an RCP file, your point cloud file, and converting it to a mesh file, which can be opened in ReCap Photo, OBJ or RCM format. That's one of the big new features for ReCap. The second feature is publish and view 3D images. Keep in mind, this is the same process, pretty much the same end result as it used to be. Just the process for uploading is slightly different. So you'll publish your projects and they'll go to a cloud storage drive. So instead of publishing to A360 drive and then sharing that way, you can now publish to a cloud storage drive. As I just talked about, the cloud storage is now the process for where all ReCap cloud models are stored. So think of ReCap Photo, which would be your aerial and object projects. In ReCap Pro, that would be your Scan to Mesh project that you create. And then lastly, the projects you publish from ReCap Pro are all stored on Autodesk Drive or Autodesk Docs if you have that. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the new features with ReCap Photo and improvements for it. So there's support for real-time kinematic and post-process kinematic from aerial drone images. So if your drone can capture that kind of data, then you can enable that feature to process in ReCap Photo. You can compute ground sampling distance value, the pixel size. You can specify ground control points. Those are those GCPs with a local coordinate system. And the cloud credit consumption has slightly changed. Previously, it used to be a certain number of photos would be the same number of cloud credits. For example, it used to be 100 to 300 photos would be 12 cloud credits, I believe. Now it's a per photo basis. So every 50 photos is 3 cloud credits. This is partly due for 2 reasons. First one is that it allows you to take the number of photos you need for the job. We found that users were trying to stay under the 300 photos for their job. So when you pay for the cloud credits for the amount of photos you use, it's more beneficial. And also down the road, development's looking at increasing the amount of photos used for aerial projects. If you're aware, the maximum number of photos for a ReCap Photo project is 1,000 photos. And with this new model, it allows for us to increase the amount of photos for those projects. And ReCap Pro new features and improvements. So export panoramic images of structured scans. So think of that structured scan, that 360-degree photo, that real view image. You can export those out as a JPEG format. You can specify the units of raw scans when you're creating a project. You can set the project unit settings set as default units. If you used ReCap in the past, you'll notice it's inherently a metric-based program. So you can create a project, say you define your imperial coordinate system, and then you'll go to open your project a second time, you'll notice it's the units have set back to metric. You can set the units to imperial now, and then it'll stick for the entire duration of the project. Stability improvements while indexing, importing, and registering scans. This is particularly dependent on when projects get really large. Also, when scanners are capturing more and more data with these more and more data with large number of scans, notice that there's stability can degrade. So that's been improved upon. And performance improvements with regions. So if you have a large number of regions in a project, and project optimization. Project optimization, think of when you delete points out of a project, ReCap allows you to optimize. It's basically erasing the history and reducing the size of that project. So circling back to those big three I talked about a couple slides ago. So scan to mesh. This was a beta feature in ReCap previous to 2018. So the process for this is very similar as it used to be. It's so you have your point cloud, your RCP file in ReCap Pro, and then you can select the entire point cloud, you can select a small portion of that point cloud, and you convert it to a 3D mesh. This is done by cloud processing. So you'll pick a location on Autodesk Drive or Autodesk Construction Cloud, and it'll publish that mesh file there. The cloud credit consumption is dependent on two features. So you can select the quality of the project you want to create. So there's low, medium, or high. And the cloud credit consumption is also based upon the number of points that you're trying to process from the point cloud. There's going to be two different file outputs that you can select. There's OBJ and RCM. And then you can manage your cloud assets on Autodesk Drive or Autodesk Docs. You can share those mesh files on the cloud storage. You can download them locally and work on them. You can also open them up from the cloud as well in ReCap Photo. It might be a bit slower than if you were to open it up locally, but it works both ways. And the second feature for what's new with ReCap 2022 is publish and view 3D images. Keep in mind, the end result is very similar. The process to do it is different. So you'll publish a model and you'll publish it to the cloud location, Autodesk Drive or Autodesk Construction Cloud. This will utilize the desktop connector, and then you can share those models and work on them, collaborate on them, annotate and whatnot, as you used to be able to do with the recap.autodesk.com. And lastly, cloud storage. So with a ReCap subscription, you'll have Autodesk Drive. And then if you have the add-on for Autodesk Docs, then you can publish models there as well. This is just a great way because it's streamlined for most Autodesk products. If you're a collaboration for Civil 3D user, you have Autodesk Docs. So you're publishing your ReCap models to the same location, which is a great new feature. It's also as well with A360 Drive. There was a 100 gigabyte limit, and it seems like it's a good amount of space, but when you start publishing large models and you have ReCap photo projects published there as well, that space can fill up quickly. So Autodesk Drive and Autodesk Docs have much larger space, so it just makes it a lot easier that you're not deleting projects, trying to publish more projects and whatnot. So that's just a great way to just manage models in a better format. So, and I'm going to kick it off to Matt here, who's going to take us through a demo of the new features for ReCap 2022.
All righty. Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say, you need to stop sharing your screen. So let me slide this over. And all right, you should be seeing my ReCap Pro, correct? All right, so like Nate mentioned, we're going to talk about the scan to mesh, how do we publish 3D views and how do we collaborate on those? So let's just dive right into it. Okay, so we've got this sort of outdoor utility plant type of scan here. You can see we've got roughly just over a dozen different scan locations. With each of these scan locations, we've got that 360 photo, that real view attached to it. So these are all terrestrial scans. So basically someone went around with a tripod and the laser scanner, set it up, did the 360 scan, moved it to another location. And that's what we have here in this overall scan area here. So, how do we take this and then create a mesh file. And why would you want to create a mesh file? Well, the easy, simple answer is, creating that mesh file is going to be a lot easier and a lot faster than just manually modeling all this stuff. If all you want is sort of a background image, if you will, sort of some of that existing conditions that, context within the project site, but, whether it's outdoor or indoor or, wherever it may be, creating that mesh is super fast, super easy. Let the power of the cloud do all that heavy lifting for you. And like Nate mentioned, store all that information up on Autodesk Docs. If you have access to the AEC collection, you already have access to Autodesk Docs as well. And the great thing about Autodesk Docs is you have unlimited storage, so you don't ever have to worry about running out of space with all these point clouds and all the associated files and aerial images if you're doing drone flights, things like that. If you've ever messed around with point clouds, you know that these things can be gigs and gigs in size. So having that unlimited storage is huge. It just relieves a huge burden off of your IT department. They don't have to go out and upgrade servers, or even worse, you put all that information on an external hard drive and it gets passed around the office, and somebody goes on vacation and locks that drive in their desk, and then all of a sudden you don't have access to it. So again, if you have AEC collection, you already have access to Autodesk Docs where you can store all that information. So that being said, let's take this site plant and let's push it up to Docs to create that mesh. So I've already kind of cleaned this up using some of the tools within ReCap here, essentially isolating all of these points that you see shown in green, and just isolating all the piping and the tanks and whatnot. And this is what I want to create my mesh from. So if we look on the left-hand side, we have this scan to mesh option right here. Rather simple interface. Once this fires up, there's that dialog that you saw in one of the slides earlier. You've got your options for, what do you want to call this mesh file? Give it something descriptive. By default, it automatically defaults to an ACC Docs location for you. So again, keeping all that information stored centrally in your cloud project. Your couple options for your low, medium, and high quality. Generating the texture, that OBJ and RCM file format, and that's really all there is to it, right? So you can see it's going to take about 60 minutes. Obviously, we're not going to run through the entire process and wait for that, but once you're satisfied with your options, just hit that submit button. You'll let the power of the cloud do all that heavy lifting for you, and you'll get a notification when it's done. And when excuse me, when it is done, you can open up that RCM file within ReCap Photo. And this is what we have here. This is that mesh from that plant site scan. And you can see, it does a really good job of, sort of recreating that 3D geometry based on the points, based on that 360 panoramic photo that's overlaid on top of each scan. And with the OBJ files, you can pull those directly into Inventor. There's also other options here to export to other file formats if you wanted to. Say FBX, if you wanted to pull this into maybe InfraWorks or 3ds Max, you can certainly do that as well. Now, one thing I do want to point out with the scan to mesh feature, and I'm going to jump to another file here for that, is if you have a point cloud that was created from drone photos. So that's the case here. We have this little site here with this little tower, and this was all just done with a drone flight. And what I've done here is isolated just the tower. And from that, I created a mesh using that same process, upload it to my Autodesk Docs folder. And when I jump over to ReCap photo to take a look at this, you're going to see that it looks more like a clay model than the actual representation. So I don't see all those materials. I don't see the stone. I don't see any of the brickwork. And so why is that? Right. So the reason for that is, unlike that plant utility plant scan that we just saw, this is a drone flight, so it doesn't have those 360 photos attached to that flight, and that's really key to getting the material, the color associated with that mesh file. But if this is, perfectly, if this is acceptable for what you need, maybe you just want some of that existing background context, that may be an absolutely viable solution for you. Just have that sort of clay representation of that asset. So that is, in a nutshell, scan to mesh. Very simple, very fast. Again, let the power of the cloud do all that heavy lifting for you. Now let's take a look at publishing the real view. So what are the real views? The real views are these, they're called mirror balls in ReCap. And essentially it's that 360 view of that particular scan location. So if I were to click on one of these, it's going to bring up sort of a 360 overlay on top of my point cloud. There we go. And so I can pan around, I can zoom in, I can get, depending on the clarity or the resolution of those photos, I may be able to read some of these meter readings. So a great way of doing some of that kind of like as-built documentation, or maybe it's a weekly type of progress report, if you will, of a particular job site or location or utility plant, whatever the case may be. And with those 360 photos, you get all this information. You also get the ability to mark up and annotate. So if I jump over to, I think this is my scan that I was working on earlier. Once this loads up here, and there we go. So I've placed a couple of annotations on this scan. Just a little note here about, there's a label that says hot, and I've got another annotation over here for a missing cover. Let's see, that's why, there we go. There's my annotations. Right, so I've got these annotations on here, but I want to be able to share this with someone who doesn't have ReCap, or maybe doesn't need access to ReCap, but they do need to see that point cloud. So this is where the publish comes into play. Now from here, where to go? There we go. Oh, I didn't save. All right, so let's save. So I've actually already published this. So the process is very similar, right? So select your cloud project. Where do you want this, all of this information stored? And again, let the power of the cloud and desktop connector move all those files for you. You don't have to worry about pushing and pulling and uploading and getting everything in the right location. This will do all of that for you. And so what do you get? So on right now I am in the construction cloud, one of my construction cloud projects. And you can see there's those same scan stations, same scan locations. I have all those little mirror balls so I can hop around from one spot to another. I have the ability to save views. So if I wanted to, kind of zoom in here, I can save this view. 1272. And so the saved views are a great way to sort of hop between view states of your point cloud. So if you want someone to look at a certain area, say, hey, take a look at view 1272, and they can just double click on that and it'll bring them to the correct scan location and focus in on that, whatever that object is. With the annotations, you can see I've got those annotations that came across, right? So I can make annotations over here in Autodesk Docs, and those will be pushed back to my model. All right, so I can add a description. I can even upload an image if it needs some sort of clarification. I can do that as well. And this is going to be synced up with my cloud project. All right, so just cancel out of this because I've already sent my model to the cloud. But those notes, those annotations, they will be synced up with this project the next time I open it. And desktop connector is going to say, hey, there's been some changes. And it's going to pull down that information so that I'll be able to see those annotations. And likewise, I can do the same thing in here. I can do those markups, push all of that information back up just by going through the publish. I got to save my project again. So going through that process of publishing, that little dialog box that you just saw earlier, there was a button there for publish or update, and it's just going to update directly to the cloud side of things, right? So great way to collaborate on your point clouds with users who, again, maybe don't have ReCap or don't necessarily need access to it, but they do need to see those point clouds, those 360 photos, those mesh files. We also talked about the cloud storage. Again, with the Autodesk Docs or BIM 360, you have unlimited storage. So being able to save these gigs and gigs and gigs worth of point clouds and aerial photos and 360 photos. Great way to keep all that information consolidated on the cloud and off of your server. So really keeps the IT folks happy. And again, just makes it easy to access all this information.
I could imagine, yeah. Matt, can you speak to speaking of sizes and data, could you speak to the relative sizes of the OBJ files that you did during the mesh workflow over there? Like, are they particularly large compared to the original scans, or how does that parse out if you have that information available?
Let's see, that's a PNG. Trying to find, let's see, which project am I in? That is a great question, and I've never looked into that. So let's see what we come up with here.
Yeah, just curious. Yeah, because I mean, unlimited storage on the Autodesk dock sounds like a good solution either way, regardless.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you have subscription to the AEC collection, you've already got Autodesk docs available to you. It just needs to be, just kind of dole out those entitlements,
right,
to the users there.
Part of the benefits, right?
Absolutely. Let's see, OBJ. So this one, just under 700 megs for that plant that we just saw right here.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Now, as far as the total point cloud, sort of that source information. Let me see if I can find it relatively quickly here. Plant. There we go. 8.5 gigs.
Okay, hold on.
So quite a drastic difference in size.
Very good stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and again, this, creating that mesh is a great way of, getting that existing context in place without actually having to model everything. Maybe it is perfectly acceptable to have this as sort of your background, right? Maybe you're not tying into all these different pipes or removing pipes, removing tanks, things of that nature. But you do need sort of that background context information. it's a great way to do it, right? Because you can see all of that 3D information. Whereas if you have a point cloud, it makes it a lot more difficult to tell which points are in front of which other points, and really getting that whole depth of view type of thing. Having that mesh file, that OBJ, the RCM, again, even if you wanted to export to FBX, just having that three-dimensional information makes it so much easier to visualize instead of trying to, get a decent grasp on, what are these 14 million dots actually representing?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I'll let you get back to it here. Yeah, as I know the yeah, I'll let you get back to it. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no. So I mean, honestly, I was getting kind of close to the end there. I know I had something on the slide for Inventor, and unfortunately, I've been having some issues with Inventor, so I won't be able to show that. But again, some of these file formats, you can pull them directly into Inventor. Point clouds definitely can go straight to Inventor. So if you do need to model up some of this stuff, maybe you want to isolate just some of those points, you can certainly do that as well. I do have a few things queued up for AutoCAD and Revit. Let's take a look at AutoCAD real quick. So here is a very simple point cloud. It's already been cleaned up. I did all that sort of busy, monotonous work earlier. And essentially what we're looking at here is just a slice of that point cloud, right? So let me just drop this back down. Did I grab the wrong grip? Let's undo a couple times. There we go. All right, so we've got this cleaned up, stripped down point cloud in AutoCAD, and we want to create sort of the basis of some existing conditions. So using the point cloud as a quote unquote guide, we can easily draw some lines in here. Once you pull in your point cloud, section it up, trim it down as much as you want. There's a command here called section lines. And essentially what this is going to do is it's going to try to connect the dots, no pun intended, of this point cloud and create that existing conditions geometry. In this case, the internal or interior faces of a wall. So there's a few different options here you can play around with. You do have the ability to preview the result before you actually accept it. So if the results aren't exactly how you were hoping they would look, you can mess around with these tolerances. I know for a fact that this one comes out pretty clean because I did quite a bit of cleanup to it. As is the case with every demo, right? The data set always works perfect, but in real life, it's totally different. But so this is kind of what you can expect if you do some decent cleanup work with your point clouds. And again, if I didn't want to, if this wasn't exactly how I was intending it or thinking it would look, I can jump back into those settings, make a few tweaks here. Maybe I'll do 1 and 1, see what that looks like. Really no change there. All right, again, this is a very, very cleaned up point cloud. I did take some additional time to run through and even crop out internal points as well. But a great, easy, fast way of creating some of that existing conditions, as built information, if you will. Now, obviously, there are some areas that would need to be cleaned up just due to the fact that there are no points in those areas, but saves quite a bit of time versus having to manually go around this and picking those points. Likewise with Revit. So you can pull in that point cloud. In this case, it's really the entire utility site there, which makes it very difficult in this case to really start to isolate the areas that you want to model. If you are going that route and modeling up the existing piping and the tanks and stuff. There's a couple ways. So there's a couple ways you can attack this. You can either crop down the view within Revit, or another possible better way would be to use each of these scan locations as your quote unquote cropped area, or your limit of the point cloud. In this case, this happens to be, I believe, yes. So this was a unified point cloud, which basically took all of those scan stations, those scan areas, and merged them into one file. So almost think of it like an AutoCAD file, and you've got a bunch of XREFs, and you bind all those XREFs. You're left with this one massive file, and all of those XREFs are just bound in there. So this is a similar situation in this case with this RCS file. But if I were to bring in the RCP file, which is that ReCap project file, which contains all of these individual scan locations, I would then have the ability to toggle on and off each of these scan locations within Revit. So making it a little bit easier, a little bit more lightweight, if you will, in terms of viewing that information within the model, and just kind of sectioning off different areas to sort of focus on as you model up those existing conditions. Are there any questions in the chat that we haven't covered? I see a few things came in.
Yeah, so there's a few questions here. Are you ready to go into the Q&A actually?
Yeah, let's do that.
Perfect. Yeah. And so yeah, let's a bunch of stuff has come in over here. Go down the list. If you could comment, do you know what scanner was used exactly for the sample data in the first place?
That I do not know.
That's okay. Yeah, as I know there's a lot of back and forth with the hardware versus the actual, ReCap process and stuff. So a bit of a division there for sure. But if you guys need, just let us know. Maybe we could look for more info for you guys on that. No problem. I think someone else had asked about, someone on YouTube had asked about like increasing point density for the scans, for example, which I believe would be done on the scanner end of things. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go the other way, so making these point clouds a little bit more lightweight, whether you bring them into Civil 3D, Revit, AutoCAD, Inventor, I mentioned that point cloud that I showed in Revit, that was kind of like everything was bound into it, right?
Yeah.
So there's an option here when you export this. We'll just call this test. And actually, I want RCS. I want the unified point cloud. So there's an option here to essentially decimate the point cloud, and it's depending on your scans, it's going to be sort of a little trial and error to see what works best for you in terms of reducing the number of points, but still maintaining that visual clarity. I found 25 millimeters is usually a good sort of sweet spot for me.
Right. You're talking like room scale, like large scale. So 25 meters is like a pretty small gap in that.
Yeah, and so I probably shouldn't have actually done this because there's
No
quite a few scans in there, as well as all the points. But essentially, what it's going to do is it's going to create that single unified bound RCS file, and using that point decimation option there, it's stripping out points that are within say 25 millimeters of each other. So drastically reducing the number of points, making this file a lot more lightweight. So remember we saw that 8.5 gig data, the properties there of that entire data set. This could be easily pulled down to under a gig,
Wow.
making it a lot more efficient, a lot more easier, or a lot less stressful for your computer, I guess, to have to process all of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually another question we got here in the chat, actually. So someone's curious, what kind of hardware are you running right now to run these programs, Matt? RAM, SSD, what kind of technical specs you got going on there?
I don't believe it's a solid state. I do know the graphics card is pretty high end. because I do VR stuff as well.
Oh, nice. Okay.
What am I? I've got 16 gigs of RAM, I believe.
Very nice. Right on.
Possibly 32. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you know what graphics card you have there exactly? Like a workstation card, or I don't know, like a GeForce or something like that?
Let's see. Let's see what we got here. All right, so 32. Yeah, 32. Where was it? I just saw it.
Yeah, there you go.
32 gigs of RAM. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, i7, good stuff. Okay.
God, it's been so long since I've looked through here.
Yeah.
Somebody please point me in the right direction so I'm not.
Are you looking
moving
for your graphics card?
Yes.
Device manager,
Device
Windows
man-
key. It's probably an NVIDIA. I would guess. Yes, I mean, even on my machine, I run 64 gig of RAM, and that works well with ReCap. Sometimes you'll the display adapters right up. There you go. Yeah, the NVIDIA,
Oh, Quadros. Okay.
and I use an NVIDIA as well. 64 gig of RAM works well with ReCap as well. Sometimes in support, I do see a machine that's, say you get a really, really good machine, like 128 gig of RAM.
Mhm.
You might not, you would think that, ReCap might run twice as fast with 128 gig of RAM. But I see once you get it beyond 64 gig, performance kind of stays consistent just because ReCap, that's about as fast as ReCap will run. So
It's good info. Right on. Okay. And then regarding kind of the connectivity of the files, the scan to mesh in particular, are the mesh files associative to the outputted RCP or the OBJ files? I would think not.
they are a result of the
Yeah,
RCP,
they're
but
derived, right?
they're not they're not tied.
I see.
So
I
there's
see.
two output files. There's the RCM and the OBJ.
Yeah,
If
I
you
see.
if you select them both, but say you had the RCP and you deleted the RCP, you're still going to have the mesh file. It
Perfect. I
doesn't.
see.
It's not like it's linked to the mesh file.
Right. So okay.
The outputted RBJ file will come in a zip file format. That's just because the OBJ is bigger than the RCM, so they're zipped up when they're after
Mhm.
you create it on the yeah, exactly what Matt's showing right there. So
I see. I see. It's good info. Thank you. I hope that answered
Yeah,
your question, Jim.
I'll just add on that the RCM file, that can be directly open through ReCap Photo. You can browse out to that cloud project so you can see I've got it my ACC docs folder and then my hub and my project name. So you can download and view that RCM file directly from that cloud project. Unlike the OBJ, which is in a zip file that you'd have to download that separately.
Mhm. Okay, cool. I think that answers the question, Jim. Let me know if you have more info there. And it's someone else is asking here. You had Revit open earlier as well. Is there anything particular you need to set up before loading stuff into Revit? Is there like a particular workflow we should be aware of? Adding cloud data to Revit here, like you did here?
To add the point cloud, it's really no different than linking in an RVT or a CAD file.
Mm-hmm.
You do have the option
Yeah.
directly for. Let me see if I can find point clouds. There we go. Yeah. So actually, let's load in this RCP file, this plant that we've been taking a look at here. And let me go to, I love when everything's on the other screen here. All right, so let's just unload that temporarily. All right, so there is that RCP of that plant site. All right, so there are all the different scan locations that I mentioned earlier. All right, so I can toggle on and off those individual scans that we see over in here, reflected by all these mirror balls, right? So I can toggle on and off these individual scan locations within my Revit model because I loaded it as an RCP file. So that ReCap project file that has all of these individual scans loaded in there. So I can go and toggle on and off whichever ones I want. Just makes it a little bit more lightweight, a little bit easier to work with inside of Revit. But that's really, that's really all there is to it. Now, if we're talking about having a point cloud that is actually geolocated, tied into a state plane coordinate system, so everything kind of flows nice and smooth from Revit to Civil 3D. There's a little bit more workflow involved with that, but it certainly can be associated with a coordinate system. It relies heavily on how the data was captured to begin with, and if those scans are in fact associated with a state plane coordinate system. But something else to be aware of right there. So if you do have that, if you are looking for that sort of level of accuracy with regards to where that point cloud is in the world, you have to take a look at the coordinate system within ReCap, and that will sort of spill over into the Revit side of things, as long as your Revit model has the appropriate location set up. In this case, it's just sort of that out of the box default Boston, Mass location, but totally doable. It just needs to be, that whole workflow needs to be set up.
Beautiful. Okay. Right on. And I think that's about the last of the questions over here. Does anyone else have any other questions? Feel free to submit them over here. And then, yeah, feel free to submit any other questions. And then, is there a good way to get in contact with you guys if, maybe we have follow-up questions or want to talk more?
For that, I will stop sharing, and Nate can share the slide deck with our contact info.
All right, back over to me here, and then let's see. All right, here's our contact information here. So Autodesk emails, just as how our names are spelled, nate.philbrick@autodesk.com, and then matt.wunsch@autodesk.com. And then we're both on LinkedIn as well. I'm not sure if Adam's going to share the slide deck because it'll be a little easier to click on the link, but you could probably just search us on LinkedIn, Nate Philbrick, Matt Wunsch, and we both have the same pictures, I believe, on LinkedIn, so it'll be pretty easy to cross-reference and pick us out. So
yeah. Right on. Okay. And so I guess I don't think we have any other questions over here. Do you guys have any closing comments or anything else you'd like to share with us from here?
I think I'm good. I think I've touched on everything I wanted to show you guys today.
Beautiful. Okay.
Definitely feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, or your reps over at KETIV there. They can help you and point you in the right direction as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I appreciate everyone.
It was it was a pleasure talking to you all. From just leave it from just from like the support end of things. I know there was a question about where's the product going. Would this be something that would be integrated in down the road or something? Some things like that where you would like to see the product get approved upon. I definitely encourage you to reach out through our support platforms, just creating a request or asking about if this is in the roadmap. Things don't go unnoticed. So if you're concerned about, I'd like to see this incorporated in ReCap. If there's a strong customer base that wants to see that incorporated, and you come through support and you get on the radar with development, I've seen it come back. So, like for example, ScandaMesh is one that was widely requested that came back, and a lot of customers are happy to see that returned. So I definitely don't hesitate to stay involved with us on the roadmap for ReCap.
Yeah, it's genuinely one of the best ways to provide your input for Autodesk is to submit ideas through that those means and stuff. So Yeah, thanks again, Matt, Nate. You guys are great. Thanks for so much for coming out here and sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you, the audience, for being out here and attending. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, feel free to reach out. Expect a survey afterwards if you guys have any feedback or kind words for Matt and Nate here. I'm sure they'd love to hear it. And yeah, I think that'll be about it for us, guys. And thank you again, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.